Did you know if I don't turn my mic on, you can't hear me? It's a thing. Look, Cece's joining us for the live stream, my dog. Anyway, I guess I'll start over. And since I did that, I'm going to play Don't Loop Tracks. I'm going to try doing the music intro. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds and then we're going to start over. I was like checking my audio to make sure I was coming out of the right mic. And then I realized I was coming out of no mic. So sorry about that. Now the mic works. Yeah, that's me like overgained if I get too close to the microphone. Just talking to Tactical about getting a black sheet up behind me until I paint this wall. And also because I noticed in the last, like the recording I did in here on Wednesday, it kind of echoes a little bit off this hard wall, which is a little different than in the other room I was in. So I'm just gonna tweak some acoustic stuff and, get it all set up. So you guys ready to go? The question is it on? Okay, looping is off. Okay, here we go. We're gonna do this again.
The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, September 15th, 2022, and this is episode 793 of Living Free in Tennessee, and it's a Friday, so it's a Homestead happenings show, and I got my notes up, and I just want to remind you, for those of you in the live stream, if you have questions or comments, put them in all caps so I can see them as we go. I am still getting used to my new studio setup and sort of refining it as we go, but it's day 2 in the new studio with a giant white wall behind me that's going to get painted at some point, but I got a lot to do. Not before Self-Reliance Festival, so I think I'm hanging a sheet back there. Anyway, so the leaves are starting to turn. Yesterday, I saw my first red leaves on a tree. It looked like a maple. It's in a parking lot. That's a sign. And it's cold at night, and I don't need my air conditioning on, and that's a sign. And I actually had to put on long sleeves for my walk with the dogs, and that's a sign. And what I need to do now is pay attention to the leaf drop from the cherry trees, because we don't want sheep eating those. So I'll be a little more cognizant of which leaves are falling where and sort of getting them gathered up. I mean, if one of my ewes or one of my boys eats one cherry leaf, it's not like a poison bomb, but apparently cherry leaves can be toxic in sheep, and we don't need that, especially right now because we have little mini sheep about to arrive again. Luckily, there's no cherry trees over where the ladies are. So I think what I love about this time of year is the fresh air in the house, just like opening the windows and airing it out, and it's not all stuffy. And I mean, air-conditioned air in my house smells a little musty because my air conditioner is a little musty. That's something I hope to have switched out by next year. But right now it's what I have, and it does beat the humidity back. And even though I deep cleaned it and bleached it and all sorts of stuff on the hottest day of the year, of course, because that's the best day to do that, I still kind of smells musty to me. And I've been like taking eucalyptus essential oil and squirting it up in the styrofoam casing where the fan is. It's a window unit, but to no avail. So that's my story today. Well, all of these signs point to one thing. And you know what that one thing is? That one thing is that fall is here. And fall is not officially here for like another week. That's okay. Fall is here, though. You know that, right? Like, it's basically fall. It's acting like fall. We don't just have like an on-off switch between the seasons, right? So we're making more fall-like decisions. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about the forage that's happening. We're going to talk about a big mistake I made with the pawpaws and some other things. Stick around for that. I would like to say, on the big picture side, strategically, we are doing projects that are going to help reduce the amount of time that it takes to manage the homestead, because if one person can manage the homestead for less than a full-time week, which I don't know if that's even possible, but we're going to do our best to automate things, then that means when one person's gone, it's easier for one person to manage. I've been talking to Tactical a lot about that because he needs to leave. I don't mean like I'm kicking him out or anything, but he should go see his family in the state where his family lives from time to time. And when he's gone, then I manage everything. And particularly how we manage our sheep right now. While I can get it done, it does not need to be this hard. And there are some parts of it that are me changes that need to happen, and some other parts are just related to needing to make the process of getting water to sheep at the very tip top of the hill easier. And long term, none of us are getting any younger. And so he's been making some changes just in how the infrastructure is. We'll talk about that under infrastructure, but it's just something where it's like every time something happens on the homestead, it's like, okay, how can we make this easier for potential future mobility issues, make it easier for one person to manage it so that we become more of the frugal with our time style of homesteader. Okay. Before we jump into that, I do want to talk about our featured event of today's show, and that is the Homestead Advanced Wound Care work session that Chuck Peoples from Homestead Medical is doing at the Self-Reliance Festival. It's on Sunday in the morning, and you can add that class at selfreliancefestival.com by going to Self-Reliance Festival, clicking on tickets, and then choosing under the workshop add-ons the Homestead Advanced Wound Care. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to spend extra money? Well, first of all, you're going home with some medical supplies as a result of taking that class. Secondly, I'm always reminded every time we have a first aid issue how important it is to know more about caring for wounds, for keeping infection away, for treating animals and humans on the homestead, because you can't always just bip out to the emergency room. You can't always go to the emergency vet. There's not always a vet who can come here. And so the more you learn, the better off you are. Those skills also apply in a non-homestead environment when things go wrong. And I can say this, like my experience with the dog who's right next to me. Hi, Cece. The dog who's right next to me. It took me 4 months of treating her to have a full recovery from a major cut she got that also caused the skin to be gone. And we kept her from getting an infection. I was doing daily, something more than once a day for a while, wound cleaning, and a lot of care went into the dog, which is fine. She grew the skin back. She has a funny looking scar. And during that process, I learned what it would be like to care for a human who was hurt to that extent. And I'm glad I did, because now I know. Now I know what's in front of me. I have a better idea of what kind of supplies to have on hand. Those are the kind of insights that you can get without having to care for your dog for 4 months by taking the class by Chuck Peoples. It is an extra fee, but it's worth every penny of it. You can get that over at selfreliancefestival.com and click on tickets, and then you just navigate to the workshops. If you don't want to do that, though, I have the link in the show notes for the audio podcast. I'm going to paste it into the comments for those of you on the live stream, just so you have it as well. It's going to be a great class, and I'm a little sad I don't get to take it. So one of these times when Chuck is doing this class somewhere else besides Self-Reliance Festival, I plan to go take his class. I also want to thank our two sponsors of today's show. The first one is freestudying.com. You know what's really cool is that there is a place where you can go where you're not going to be censored for talking about the stick or talking about what you do on your homestead or showing pictures of processing your pork or whatever it is that you do that has caused you to get a strike. One of these times, guys, I'm going to have a final strike here and I'm going to be gone. And you can still find me on freestudying.com. You can find me at odyssey.com. because those guys are not kicking us off for just sharing real life experiences on the homestead. Unfortunately, it is happening other places. So that's why freestudying.com exists. I set up a community page there so that y'all can talk to each other. And in order for that community page to be active, y'all need to be there talking to each other. I do pop in about once a day or once every other day and try to respond to all comments that have come towards me. But the only way this works, guys, is if you go to freestudying.com, create your account, find Living Free in Tennessee, and start talking to each other. We also have other social networks that you may want to tap into, and that is Telegram and MeWe. Our second sponsor of today's show is Agorist Tax Advice. Matthew Sursley from Agorist Tax Advice has a really cool business idea. He's a lawyer, but he has worked in the legal side of business finance. He owns and manages rental properties and has helped people with end-of-life structural planning. So what he does is he analyzes your finances, all of it, like your personal finances, your business finances, everything, and looks at what he knows on the federal level and says, these are some ways you could structure your businesses differently if he thinks that there are some ideas that might help you optimize your tax write-offs. He'll say, these are the write-offs you could be tracking. Are you tracking these write-offs? Here's how you track those write-offs. And what that does is give you access to information that may not be as easy for you to find when you have somebody you can pay to find it for you, right? So it's a really cool service that he offers at agoristaxadvice.com. And the best thing about Matthew is he doesn't want to take your money if he doesn't think he can help you. So if you want to have a free consultation, go to agoristaxadvice.com and sign up for a free consultation. It'll be like a 15-minute call. He'll figure out if he sees that you are in a place where he can help you. And if you're not, no harm, no foul, guys. Might as well check that out, right? Okay, with that, it's time for our first segment of today's show. And that segment is Featured Forage. This is where I just talk about some of the wild edible stuff, although I'm starting to cultivate a lot of the wild edible stuff in my food forest and other places. I talk about this every week, and it's basically just kind of what I'm interacting with. So some of these things have been on the list for 3 or 4 months because they've been growing for 3 and 4 months. And that means that you may hear about them from time to time. Sometimes I go in to a little bit more detail on how I use them, but we had a really cool week this week. And I see Mama Rock says, I used to be a vet tech. Yeah, it's really cool when you've been a vet tech and you're on the homestead because you will be like, oh, I have to deal with this cut. Oh, I have to deal with, this sick animal. Do I think they need antibiotics? Like, what is it? Is it another sign of like a hoof infection or, I actually there's a piece of me that wonders if there was just a volunteer program for summer volunteers at a veterinary office, if that wouldn't be worth doing. I haven't found one though. I've asked my veterinarian, like, do you take summer interns? Because I could come in 3 days a week or something in the summer. But so far that has not happened. Anyway, okay. Here's what I've been finding forage-wise. I'm going to look at my notes real quick. I made a fatal error last Friday. I recorded the podcast. I told you about the pawpaw tree that needed to be shaken. Then I finished up the podcast, packed my stuff, drove to Nashville to work on the Nashville duplex, forgot to shake the tree. Came back Saturday for the Homestead Alliance and LFTN Freedom Cell meetup that we're doing once a month at my place. We had a presentation on herbal remedies. It was very cool. I really like the lady who did it, Tatiana Sakurai. She did a great job. Drove by that tree on the way back because I got to Nashville and went, forgot to shake the tree. We'll shake it on the way back. Drove by the tree. All the pawpaws were gone. Here's what happened. Pawpaws fell, and then the coyotes got them and ate them, and I found piles of coyote poop with pawpaw seeds in them. So I missed my window. This is why when that voice tells you it's time to shake the tree, you shake the tree. Very important. Goldenrod is everywhere. I already harvested goldenrod and made tincture this year because I have a place that grows on my property. But now on my walks, I'm just seeing it all over the place. And this is a plant where I talked to somebody who is a homeopathic medicine specialist, and she was like, I just don't prescribe goldenrod anymore, even though it's good for so many things because it's an endangered plant. Oh, cool. I spilled down my front. It's an endangered plant. It's everywhere. So that's interesting. So it must be endangered in other parts of the world. I don't know. It's the weed that comes up when you disturb the soil in Tennessee, you get goldenrod. It's very interesting. So that's happened. That's why I made a tincture. I made too much tincture too, so I've been talking to a couple of people who might want some of the tincture I made. I think I'm going to start making tinctures in jelly jars instead of like pint jars, because I made a pint of tincture and then I was like, okay, so I need 2 drops of that and 2 drops of this, and whoa, that's not very much. It's going to take a really long time to go through that. It takes me a year putting a dropper full of vanilla in my coffee once or twice a day to go through an entire quart of homemade vanilla. So, the medicinal side of goldenrod, if I'm using it because I feel a cold coming on or whatever, or to fight inflammation, maybe 4 times a year max. That's like maybe 100 drops max. It's going to last a really long time. Anyway, live and learn, right? I haven't been making tinctures for very long. I've traditionally used herb remedies in the form of teas that I make. So it's how we learn these lessons. Anyway, nettles are ready for harvest as well. I'm going to make a nettle tincture this year, not just have it dried for tea. It's great dried for tea though. And I have all the mints. I really want to get another good mint harvest before we like slide into our first frost, which makes the mint unhappy. That first frost usually happens sometime between October 1 and October 31. I've had a couple years where we didn't get one in October, but eventually we're going to get a frost, right? Other than that, it frosts in October. And then I am grabbing yarrow and making a tincture out of that too. And I have yarrow all over the yard, plus 2 additional plants were left here by Tatiana that I was hoping some people who were here at her presentation in our Homesteader Alliance / Freedom Cell to take. I wanted them to take it home. I don't need it. But now that I have it, I'm going to plant it next door so that it's more places. The echinacea I've had a really good echinacea year. I've harvested what I want for the winter. It's got the flowers on and they're going to seed. So I'm going to be collecting seeds for that to try to get another echinacea patch started. Like, realize that it took me about a decade to get this one started, because what happens is I start something that requires care. I travel a lot. The care doesn't happen. The plant dies. This particular plant came from, you've heard of me talk about Senior Chief Electric, Matt. His wife, Ashley, their first year started a bunch of different plants, too many plants, gave me an echinacea plant. I put it in my aquaponics system. So if it goes in my aquaponics system, guys, usually does pretty well because it waters itself. And the plant did great. I got 1 flower and I was like, great. And then it went away. And the next year it came back. And I was like, oh. And then that year I ended up taking the bed down that it was in and I transplanted it up on the hillside. And that was the hillside garden. And then it did pretty good. And I harvested a little bit of echinacea last year. And I just sort of left everything back out there to go to seed. And now I have like an echinacea bush, which is purple coneflower for you guys who don't. It's like an ornamental too. So it's not like you can't get it. Man, I'm so happy that the thing is going well that I'm hoping to get another patch started. It's kind of like with strawberries. The same thing happened. It took me a few years to get the strawberries because I had to really pay attention to the strawberries. And now I have a lot of strawberries to thin this winter, and I'm going to transplant them places because they make great ground cover. I will say I'm having a fight between chocolate mint and strawberry, and the chocolate mint is winning. So I do definitely want to get some other patches of strawberries going. And then happily, Carrie Brown from Strong Roots Resources made me some red rocks to put out with my strawberries about the time that strawberries become ripe so that I trick chickens. I only have 1 chicken left, but ducks actually will get into your strawberries too, if they can. The best thing that happened this week, though, is that Tactical came in on Wednesday and he said, I saw an interesting looking mushroom out by the shooting range. And I was like, oh, that's neat. Well, can you describe it? And he said, well, it's kind of orange. I'm like, that might be chicken of the woods. So he went out and said he found where he forgot where it was exactly. Found it, came back, got me. I went out and looked at it. I was like, that looks like chicken of the woods, but it's not quite as dark orange as I'm used to. So I sent some pictures to some friends. And they're like, no, that's chicken of the woods, Nicole. And then some, I looked at some third-party sources, and here's the deal. I've never found chicken of the woods that was young enough to harvest. I always find it when it's too late and it's chewy and it's gross. And I've only really had chicken of the woods mushroom a couple of times when other people found them and gave me their extra. So super exciting. I showed Tactical how to harvest it. He harvested it, and we had 2 days of chicken of the woods. The first day I just sauteed it in butter with garlic, and it was good, but it was a little dry. He's like, it kind of tastes like dry chicken meat. I'm like, yeah, that's chicken of the woods. And he's like, maybe it was past its prime. I'm like, maybe, but it becomes woody. Like you can't chew it, right? So yesterday I had a pot roast and I had green beans I was preparing from the garden, and I did a saute of green beans with garlic and onion and the chicken of the woods mushrooms. And then I sauteed the green beans, threw in the chicken of the woods, threw in a cup of broth, and then simmered that. So got the beans to al dente. Salt, pepper, garlic, more garlic, always more garlic. And then I added a cup of heavy cream and a cup of Parmesan cheese, and that's what we had. So it was like sort of a creamy, cheesy, mushroomy, beany thing. It was really good. And there's a little bit of that left over today, and then the pot roast, and I ended up putting all of it in the pot roast container. So like tonight, if we get to eat at home tonight, we're gonna have a one bowl meal of the leftovers from that, and then it's on to cook something else. So that was my chicken of the woods score, which really made me super duper happy. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about livestock. This is where I talk about the critters on the farm and what's going on with them. We are still on baby sheep watch. Nobody has had any sheep or lambs. Okay, yeah, I should use the right word, right? Nobody's had any lambs. I've got 2 ewes. One looks very wide and pregnant, but her udder isn't as huge as I expected, so I think she's a month out. The other one, her udder keeps getting bigger and bigger, so I feel like we're close, but I would say Murphy's Law of lamb birth would put that right in the middle of Self-Reliance Festival when I have farm sitters here. So we'll see. Of course, we'll put pictures up if we have little babies. And then hi, Spags, welcome to the live stream. The boys and the girls will come back together in October. And the ones who have just had sheep now, like little babies now, they're not probably going to get impregnated until December or January. So I have one who may get impregnated when the boys come back in after Self-Reliance Festival. We are timing that rotation of like where the sheep graze so that they are close into infrastructure for anybody who's caring for them here while we're gone. So that's something that Tactical has thought about, weeks in advance to make sure that is going to happen. And this morning at 6:30, I heard Tactical hop on the 4-wheeler. I was like, that's weird. He doesn't usually do that. And then he came back at about 8. He's like, I moved the girls. And I got over there. And we have these twin babies that were born at the beginning of summer. So they're still small, but they're not super small. Like they're about ready to wean themselves. And he said, I walked up and they were playing. And here's the thing. When sheep play, it's like they prance around and they have a really good time. It's like, I just had to sit there and watch them. It was a nice, cool morning and I could watch the sheep play and it was really cute. So I just stayed there for a while. And I was like, that was a good move because things have been pretty busy here. And then with my extra stuff going on in the background personally, I've been out of town more than usual. And so he's had a much tougher load to carry this last probably 5 months or so. So I was really glad that he got that time with the sheep this morning. And it's those times on the homestead where you're like, oh yeah, it's not just all hard work and toil, right? It's kind of fun when you have the little baby sheep playing with each other and you can just sit there and watch them. We are also going to start rotating the goats soon. We've got some more fencing infrastructure going in to rotate them better because we can rotate them a little bit, but it's going to be a broader rotation. And the thing about rotating goats is you really want them to stay where you want them. and not to get out of where you want them. And they're at my house and I have a food forest I'd rather they not destroy. So that's going to happen as we go into winter, which is, it may seem weird because stuff is growing now. But what I've noticed about goats in the winter is they'll eat stuff back pretty well. And you go into spring looking pretty good if you're able to rotate goats through an area. Deer season is upon us and there are deer everywhere. Last year, there were not very many deer that I was seeing, but this year I've seen 3 or 4 bucks around and a lot of females all over the place in the holler and other, like in Nashville this week. I looked out the window and there were deer in my yard in Nashville. So there's that. So it looks like a high density possibility for us this year, which would be good. Last year we got 2 deer all on the same day. And it was in November when I was doing my pantry webinar, which I have one person who, if you're listening to this, I will get you the link to the pantry webinar. But I was lucky enough that we have a good community here and I was able to call Nighthawk over. He skinned them. He parts them out. The hunters who got them tagged them. And so I think they took the antlers or something. And then then Nighthawk just put it in my outside fridge, which I need to make sure is empty going into hunting season. And then I left it there to age for a week. And then I cut them up and put them in the freezer. And I haven't formerly aged the venison before I freeze it. I've typically brought it out and left it in the fridge for a few days. I'm never going back. We are always aging it for at least 7 days. In the fridge outside. It's nice to have a fridge outside for that because I don't have a big hanging locker for deer and it's not cool enough here to just put them out, outside or something. So that means that we need to be ready to butcher on a moment's notice or have a plan for if I'm gone, how that happens. It just may turn out that I have a bunch of packages of deer shins again. I'm okay with that. Y'all thought that was amusing when I shared that story. And I'm sure if that person is here cutting up deer for me when I'm not here, I will end up with more packages of deer shins and elbows and whatever else they decide to call packages of things. It is time once again to process rabbits. We're having a pretty good rabbit year. And it's also time once again to breed rabbits. So going into winter, we'll breed the rabbits a few more times. I'm trying to breed them 4 times a year only. You can breed rabbits more, but I feel like it's healthier for the moms to do it 4 times a year. So that's the rotation we're on. And then also having tiny little rabbits when it's -5 degrees is not awesome. They can manage it, but it's not awesome. I did that last year. I'm hoping not to repeat that this year. It was like 3-day-old rabbits or something when it was -5 degrees here, which was not super fun. I am picking up a American breast rooster or 2 on Monday from our friend Tennessee Permaculture. That's Mike Vertreese. He is a soil expert, by the way. If you ever have soil questions, like talk to that dude. He's also pretty good with pigs and other homestead related stuff. But he has American breast chickens and it's from a different source than mine are from. So I'm getting some of his roosters, processing all of mine. If you're hearing this and you need American breast roosters and your source is not that guy in Mississippi, which if your source is that guy in Mississippi, you know who I'm talking about. There's a guy in Mississippi. We can do an exchange with them. Like I'll just give them to you, but you got to get them in the next week or 2 because we're going to process all the boys who are not coming in because I want the ones I have now to genetically cross with the ones from Mike and then have stronger genetics. And we have to kind of pay attention with who interacts with who on that one. So we're also going to have to get leg bands. Mine are white. So any white ones I get, I like if I get a white one from Mike, which I think I am, I need to put a leg band on it. There's a possibility I'll get one that's a spotted one as well, which is cool because I wanted multiple colors. I ordered the multiple color pack from that guy in Mississippi and he sent me all white ones. And I think it's because my order took a long time to fulfill. So I am looking to expand the variety in my American breast flock. If you have American breasts and they're not from that guy, just let me know. Like over time, I am going to be integrating multiple varieties of them from different sources on purpose to keep the genetics strong. And then for the sheep, it's time to put on their ear tags for the 3 that were born this year. If I wanted to ever take them to a processor, they're supposed to be marked. Also, right now I can tell the difference between cloudy and then red and then whatever the third little baby is called because they all look different. But at some point, they're all going to look very much the same to me. So I want to be able to number them and just know who is who. That also helps us if somebody gets sick and decide that they're a cull for processing time. So sometimes when one of our sheep gets sick and then recovers, we're going to process them because we don't want to keep them in the genetic pool, right? So that just means that I need to know who is who. Now, usually what happens is sheep end up with collars, but right now our two boys have collars on. They do. And because they have collars on, it's because we had to move them a tenth of a mile, and that was better on a leash than just, scaring them or hurting them. Like if you can get them on a leash, then if they start, you have them. And sheep are not strong enough to, get you, basically. I'm hearing meowing. Who's meowing? Oh, hi, Tigger. Tigger's in the room meowing. He's going to the vet today at 1:30. Lucky guy. Okay, so that's everything on the livestock. If you have questions about our other livestock, let me know. Like the ducks are fine. I have no duckling update or duck update. We should be getting chicken eggs today. Our first and earliest chicken egg possibility from the American breast chickens is today. It's exactly the day of laying. They probably won't lay today, guys. But sometime in the next week, we'll probably start getting tiny eggs from the chickens. And then I can put my signs up to sell eggs and see if anybody wants to buy eggs. Next up is the grow segment. This is where I talk about what we're growing on the homestead. And this time of year, I'm winding down. And every year I think I'm going to do this big fall garden and I'm going to try to stretch it into winter. It's going to be awesome. And then I realized that it's holiday coffee roasting time. And then I realized that my coffee roaster broke and I'm waiting for a part that should come today. And then we're fixing the roaster. And then I have all the orders to fulfill, which means I'm going to be roasting my butt off tomorrow. And then I realized that holiday coffee orders are starting to come in. And then I realized the Self-Reliance Festival is only 4 weeks away. And right before that, I get to speak at the Midwest Preparedness Project. And right after that is the Kentucky Sustainable Living Expo. And then right after that is Jack Spirko's workshop. Then it's Thanksgiving. And then that's the choir performance for Christmas. And all of that time from like mid-October until about December 22nd, we're roasting at about 4 to 5 times our usual capacity, which is kind of time intensive. That's all I'll say. And I go, I've done a lot of work on my garden all year long. I've done pretty well canning stuff, and maybe, just maybe, this is still not the year for Nicole Sauce to have broccoli ready to harvest in December. And I say, screw it. And I reduce to my most finite priorities. And here's what they are. 1, I direct seeded lettuce a few weeks ago, and it's up, and they're like, a little ½ inch to an inch tall, and they're way too dense because I just sort of scattered the seed out and roughed it up. And then we have automated watering, so they did great. And God sent us rain, so that really helped too. Put radishes out with them too, because radishes are good on salad, right? So that's happening. They're up. I need to thin them, so I give them more room to head out, which then means we can eat the little baby greens. But I realized I didn't start any plants inside to transplant to my aquaponics system, which is right outside my house, which is a great way to have some winter vegetables. I can easily put row cover over it, and the water moving just sort of keeps their feet warm, which helps them on frosty days. And I'm sitting plants in my garden. You see where this is going, right? So I'm going to transplant some of the lettuce from the garden that I started into the aquaponics system. I'll probably throw some seeds of radishes into the aquaponics system, but unless I top water, they won't really germinate. So we will see. That's my fall garden. The other thing I'm doing is we'll be transplanting any Egyptian walking onion, like seed heads we have on the top of the onions. I want to have some in my upper garden. I want to have some on the hillside garden. So we'll see. I have a few out in some pots that I can get access to. And then if Tactical has any in his system, I'll take those too and just spread them around the property. My approach with Egyptian walking onions is the more we can plant, the better off we are, because that kind of becomes a perennial onion crop, which is great because traditionally I have not been very good at growing like the big bulb out onions that I love to eat, but I get little bulb out onions. That's what I get. That's what this year I got like 50 tiny onions. So I'm going to prepare the ground differently next year. I think I'm going to go hill for onions. So we'll see how that goes and I'll report back. I also always plant garlic about the last week of October unless I miss the boat. So it's time to prepare the garlic bed, and then we super mulch it for the winter. And I have not purchased garlic in a very, very long time. Like I am garlic independent at the homestead. That's the thing that I will never worry about having to buy garlic ever again, as long as I get my garlic in the ground now, or not now, but by 4 weeks from now or 5 weeks from now. The last Brussels sprout harvest is happening probably this weekend. I just let one stalk go to see if it would go, and I want to get it before the little florets open up. And then, of course, this year flowers did great. So I've had some nice bouquets on my countertop this year, which has been nice. And mostly they haven't been pushed over by jerk cats. Mostly. There was like, my cats go through these phases of being more jerky than other times. Especially if I've been out of town, like the first few days I'm back, they act out. Well, I've been in Nashville working on my duplex a lot the last week and a half. And the cats were just total jerks for 3 days after I got back from the last trip there. And I saw one going for it and I stopped her, and then I put all vases in my sink for going to bed so that they would not push them over at night and get this like water all over my wood. I have a plywood countertop because I haven't had the funds to put in a granite or something, quartz or whatever. I think quartz is what I was going to put in because it's a little less than granite, but it's super strong and it's pretty. Anyway, that's the countertop I want, which can resist water better than stained wood. But right now I have a stained wood, and that is fine as long as we don't push vases of flowers over and just have water sitting on it for 8 hours while Nicole Sauce sleeps, right? So I'm really happy with how they did. I was supposed to have a segment on harvest meals, so I'm going to tell you what I did, but it's not in my show notes. So this week, after being in Nashville so much, I ate out. I ate Mexican food. I actually had pizza with wheat crust. That's a new one. Chinese food, Thai food. I didn't have the rice with the Thai food. I just got a curry. It was delicious. And something else. All of that was from restaurants. So I basically ate from restaurants for a week. So needless to say, by the time I got back to the holler, my stomach was like super not happy because we are used to pretty much all natural whole foods that we source here. And when your system gets used to that, changing it up is not all that awesome. And I changed it up. And I came back and I was like, yeah, I really want real food. And Tactical's like, I do too. Even though like I was here, I wasn't eating the way I usually do, and I could use just some home cooked food. So I dutifully got the pressure cooker out and put a chuck roast in it, and it was an English roast. Ran the pressure cooker for half an hour, opened it up, put green beans in. So it's going to go another half hour because it was like late in the day when I got home. So that was like the fastest way to get the roast done and have it tender. And to that, I added some sauerkraut that I'd made, like, because it's tasty with sauerkraut, garlic, onion, cumin, salt and pepper. And that was it. Oh, I had like a little bit of a jar of cowboy candy that was left behind from the meetup we did last weekend. I put that all into, and I hit on again, and my pressure cooker, which is brand new, it's like 2 weeks old, stopped working. And it developed an E4 error. And I tried to Google the E4 error. I tried to deal with customer service at the place where I bought it for the E4 error. And they were like, well, you have to talk to the manufacturer. Here's their email. So then I talked to them and they're like, no, you have to talk to the manufacturer. We just sold it. We just resold it. I was like, great, I'm going to return this. So I executed a return because I was done. spending hours trying to troubleshoot an E4 error on a brand new pressure cooker. And that meant that Tuesday night, the night of the English roast, it was like 8 o'clock and the roast wasn't cooked all the way and the beans weren't done because I had been running cycles and the cycles had not been cycling. Yeah. So I pulled the pizza ripcord and we had cauliflower crust pizza from the freezer, which I also learned a lesson there that if you put the cauliflower crust pizza in the giant, like oversized Lodge fry pan that I keep in my oven, which is as big as a pizza, and then you try to pull it up out over that lip, you end up with folded in half upside down pizza, partially scrambled. So I had that, and then I did a second pizza in there because the pizzas are about this big, and Tactical Redneck eats enough for 4 adult males at dinner, just for context. So I put the second pizza in and I was like, note to self, never try to take a pizza out of that pan again, ever. Just cut it in the pan, serve it from the can in pieces. It will be fine. So the second pizza turned out like a pizza and the first one was scrambled and I called Tactical in and it was like 8:30 at night. We hadn't eaten all day. I was like, here's your pizza scramble. And he ate it without complaint. And I ate it. It was good with a fork. And I said, I'm really glad you don't complain about my failures. And he's like, well, it tastes good. It's not like you burnt it or something. So, and then of course, the second one was like a pizza and he finished that too. So that's the way that goes. But the next day I put all of that stuff from the pressure cooker in the crock pot and just let it go on low all day. And it was delicious. And I had a second tri-tip roast. And I had like visions of coating it in bacon and crisping it and doing like a whole thing. That also went in the crock pot with the same sauerkraut and the leftovers of the English roast. And I cooked it again all day yesterday. And it was delicious. And we're going to have that tonight as well with that green bean recipe I shared with you earlier. So sometimes harvest meals for me look like, I ran out of time, but I really want home cooked food, so let's get it done. And sometimes they look like folded in half and upside down pizza with cauliflower crust. That's reality on the homestead, my friends. Next up, we have Holler Neighbors and Community. We haven't been talking a lot this week, but we've done some things. So I had an 8-foot by 4-foot foldable stage delivered for Self-Reliance Festival because we have 2 tents this year, or this one. And I have the one tent, the one stage that Ken Esch made, and I was going to have him make another one. And then I was like, I should just suck it up and buy one of those stages. And then it turned out they weren't that expensive. And they fold up smaller. So I got it and they freighted it to me. The lady told me it was in a 12-foot long box and it weighed 220 pounds and there was no way I could get it out of the truck by myself. And I said, Tactical. Apparently an 8-foot by 4-foot stage is in a 12-foot box and weighs 220 pounds, even though it is designed to be portable and set up in pieces so that you can move it, which seems odd to me, but okay. I'm guessing we can just open the box and take the parts out. You game for that? He goes, sure. So then we get there. And it probably does. Well, Steve estimated it weighs 120 pounds or so. And it was 8 feet long. It was not 12 feet long. So I was really thankful to have assistance from the Holler Neighbors. We went out, we grabbed it. Tactical and I were able to load it into his truck, no problem. Steve and Tactical unloaded it into the storage area for SRF stuff. And this is where you don't always believe the freight people when they tell you how much something weighs. Because I think people put weights in that they know are over the line so they don't get charged extra. And apparently it was at least 100 pounds over the line. There was a pallet that we did separate the box from. So the pallet weighed something, but that pallet did not weigh 100 pounds. Did not. Not at all. The other cool thing about the Holler Neighbors is this week, my roaster broke. And you hear that and you think, oh no, did you catch your roaster on fire again? Well, some parts did burn. But what happened is something predictable. The elements went bad and I knew they were going bad. And I've been working on getting extra elements here and I have 3 of the 4 I need. And the guy I get them from had ordered some, and we're waiting for him to come in. It's been a sort of a long, drawn out process. And then I'm in the middle of roasting on Sunday, and my last roast did not happen. In fact, I composted those beans. So they just weren't getting up to temperature. I'm like, my elements must have burnt out. So then I was like, well, hey, Nighthawk, let's just look at what this is going to look like. I talked to the guy. The elements had arrived. I asked him to overnight them to me, and he did, and they're not here yet because overnight from the country to the country does not get them to you the next day. And while we were looking in there, we noticed that I had burned some of the 4-gauge wire in there because when the elements went out, they shorted out, like, which means positive and negative become one thing, and they caused burning to happen. And then I have these like, I don't, they're not controllers, but I call them controllers because I can't think of the name right now. But that, like, it goes from the element to these things, and then power comes into those things and powers the elements. Anyway, one of those had burnt out too. So Nighthawk got the part numbers, sent me a picture of one to order online. I ordered it. The person who built the roaster was like, you can use these instead. And I ordered those, and I have those on hand. And then Nighthawk works at an HVAC company, and he's like, I'll see if we can source these because this part is also in furnaces. And so they were able to get me the parts next day for less than any of the other sources for those parts. So those parts are here now. I'm really thankful they did that for me. And I've just been waiting for the elements. We've got the wire, we've got the parts. Nighthawk has already installed that part that needed to be installed. I got 2 of them and replaced both of them that are in the roaster because I figure if one's gone, the other one's probably getting old, and it's like a $12 part. And then he kept the one that wasn't bad for me just sort of on a shelf as a backup part. So that's done. I'm just waiting for the elements. So the elements probably will arrive today while I'm working offsite, and hopefully we'll get those in, and then I will be back up and running. At the same time, I have another roaster that has been at the shop for like a year, and I'm kind of hoping, speaking of elements, apparently the elements just arrived based on the comments I'm seeing here. So without Nighthawk's help and Tactical's help and everybody's help, all of this would be harder. That's what I'm trying to say. So the roaster repair has been a group effort, and I'm pretty sure Tactical and I get to put elements in later today. Yay! And then, of course, with my duplex remodel project going on, I got all the drywall hung, and we are finishing up screwing. So it's hung, but you need to put extra screws in. So I got the screws holding it on the ceiling, but there's extra ones to go in. And I need to make sure all the screws that are up there are slightly below the paper so the mud guy has an easier job mudding. And I hired a mud guy. I'm so happy. So I'm going in today, finishing that because mud work starts tomorrow. So I'm super stoked about that. And then the next thing that happens is cleaning and painting everything. I'm replacing the bathroom vanity. I'm replacing the bathroom medicine cabinet. I'm going to recaulk the tub. I have a couple other various and sundry things to do, but the whole place needs painting. If anybody's hearing this and you're a painter and you want to work on it and you're looking for work in Nashville, reach out to me because I will be painting it in some spare time, but I have more paint than hours right now. So if you're in the right price range, man, could be some easy money, make your own schedule sort of thing. If not, then I'll be painting a lot more than I'd like to be, but that's what you do when you have a rental property. There are times when you put a lot of time in. We're doing a show about that next week. Because I'm going to be in town, though, and Tactical's coming to help me, Nighthawk is doing nighttime animals. I just texted him, can you do nighttime animals? He goes, yes. Are you staying away overnight? No, I'm just probably going to be home late, and ducks need to go to bed. He's like, do I need to do anything with the automated chickens? And the answer is no. The automated chickens are great because they're automated. That's what's made us really open our eyes to wanting more automation. Next up, we have infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we are building on the homestead. Tactical has started putting in semi-permanent electric fencing over at the property next door and here. And what that means is aluminum wire for the charge to go through that he can put up with proper insulators and never have to move it again and just tap into it with the temporary fencing. So he was really excited this morning explaining this whole process to me, but it kind of boils down to this. In all the hard to reach areas and hard to step in post areas, he's figured out how to attach the aluminum wire to trees and other things in a way that they don't short out unless a branch falls on them or a leaf grows. But you know what I mean. What that means is he doesn't have to walk through these hard to get through areas 3 times to do 3 stripes of wire, or 2 times to do 2 stripes of wire. And the reason his eyes are glowing is that some of these places that we have been running the sheep, it's like there's a little bit of cliff climbing involved to put the fence in. I've helped him do it. I know. I get it. So he figured out just put that more expensive aluminum wire that lasts a while onto the areas that are hard to get to. And he's like, the next paddock, I just have to run a straight line and I'm done. No clearing, just a straight line. And I was like, I understand why you're so happy about that. So that's what I mean by we are putting in some improvements to make it easier to manage, because the most time intensive part of managing the homestead right now is rotating the sheep. I mean, gardening is time intensive, but for me, it's also relaxing. So, and it can be more or less time consuming depending on how much you want to invest in that. Like the sheep just need to be kept alive. And if you don't rotate them regularly, they get exposed to parasites. And then you have a whole nother can of worms to deal with. He's also in the middle of building a new rabbitry, which he's putting pine tar on the structural elements. And I think that's probably getting done. He's making a huge mess under Taj Mahal every time he does this. So yes, I said what I said. Next up, we have finances. This is where we talk about the money on the homestead. So the chickens are due today. The most expensive chicken eggs we will ever make from this flock happen when these tiny little eggs start, because to this point, we've invested almost 6 months of feed and care and electricity and all of that into the chickens and 0 eggs. So that first egg is like your $100 egg or whatever. Now you can look at it that way, but it's also, over time they do start paying off. But this is why eggs are $5 or $6 a dozen when you raise them the way I do, because I'm not in a Tyson like egg factory. I'm letting these ladies go out and hang out, and they like to play in the grass and chase bugs and all the things chickens like to do, and that makes for better eggs. People are like, why are your egg yolks so orange? I'm like, because they eat grass and bugs, and yeah, they eat chicken feed too, but they also eat our table scraps. It's my composting system, so that's kind of fun. So the new tracking spreadsheet I've put up is working, as long as I remember to ask when Tactical goes to town to bring me all the receipts and we do the spreadsheet. And that's good. I've been entering all my stuff in there too. So we are about 2 weeks away from telling you what our actual homestead grocery bill is. And I'll share that with you when we get there. And finally, Andy Higginbotham, who is somebody, you've probably met him at my spring workshop or other places, has sheep. And they are grass-raised sheep. No antibiotics, no vaccinations available. He is in Indiana. And I don't know the best way to reach him. So if you hear this and you're like, I want some of this, just let me know and send me an email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, and I will forward your email to him. I will probably set up a form on my website that forwards to him. But he has, I think, quarter, half and whole, or at least half and whole sheep, like lamb meat available. He's processing a bunch of them in the next, I think, 4 weeks. And I believe he's coming to Self-Reliance Festival. And if that's the case, then maybe you could pick them up there if you're not in Indiana. So don't quote me on that. Ask Andy. But they are for sale, and this is some of the best meat you'll get, guys. Like, we have loved our lamb meat since we got it last year. And he asked me if I wanted to buy any. I was like, no, because I have some more I need to process, and we'll end up with too much. So, anyway, I wanted to throw that out there. Again, if you're interested in a half or a whole or maybe a quarter, if he's doing quarters, email me, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, and I'll forward your email to Andy. Anyway, that's everything I have from the homestead today. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. One, get your coffee at hollowroast.com. And yes, Halloween is coming, which means I'm in my Halloween mug. Well, I use my Halloween mug all year because my niece gave it to me for my birthday last year, I think it was. Anyway, the other way you can support the show is become a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. And with that, guys, go out and make it a great week.